So let's talk about digital technology and its huge role in the world. So, what is digital technology? It could be defined in computers, smartphones, iPads, AI, video games, and streaming services, but as well as the most popular one being social media. But what is social media? According to Carl and Hayes, it's social network sites from public relations, information technology, and as well popular press. So basically, social media is a way for internet users to communicate around the globe through posting pictures and videos and many other more things. So, what are my research questions? So, how does social media impact war? Second, how are the Palestinian people or the youth being impacted by the media during the time of war? And lastly, what other things can be said in the bigger picture? I know the last one's pretty broad, but we'll get more into it much later on. So, why is this important? Social media plays a huge role in communications. This affects global problems such as politics and war, human rights, information and communication technologies, psychology, and sociology of humans. But I want to be more specific. So, how does social media impact human rights with the conflicts such as war? So my population is the Palestinian people or youth, to be more specific, from children to late 20s. And the reason for this is because of the war between the government of Israel and the Palestinian people and the use of social media. So a little bit of history. In the late 1800s to the early 1900s, Jewish people started migrating, freeing themselves from the oppression from Europe. And if you fast forward to 1917, before it's trying to be known as Israel, it was a country of Palestine. It started being a semi-multicultural place with a lot of Jewish and Turkish people. In the 1930s to 1940s, conflicts started to rise. Disputes about religion, territory, and differences was getting to a point where politics had to get involved, and when there's politics, government and the military is involved and talks about war. In 1948, Israel claimed Palestine as their own territory, and so the Palestinian people had to find sanctuary in Gaza and the West Bank and many other more. So present day, on October 7th, Israel targeted a bombing campaign against Gaza, where they claimed to defeat Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. So till this day, the war is still going on, and it's not only affected the native Palestinian people, but Jewish people as well, and affected things much on a global scale. So what was my process? So obviously archival data. So I had to find articles that talk about the effects of war it has on people, such as mental health state. So for instance, in World War II, after the war, there were so many traumas, mental health issues were a rise of many Jewish people. But I also had to understand my population. So observing the population, in this case the Palestinian youth during the time of war, but as well observing social media uses like throughout press or journalism. But also uncovering roots, uncovering the root of the bigger picture. So uncovering politics, government, corporations, as well as the psychology and sociology of humans. So let's talk about trauma and war, in war and colonization. So, in an article named Cities Creating Trauma Informed Culturally Sustainable Smart Cities for Psychological Well-Being, they talk about topics like colonization and how that affects the land and trauma. This is really helpful because it's used to understand the land trauma of the Palestinian people losing their country. So, the Palestinian people. In the article called The Consequences of War-Related Traumatic Stress Among Palestinian Young People in the Gaza Strip, they do a quantitative study where one of the studies was an intervention study where they studied 971 adolescents, where they measured traumatic events throughout PTSD, mental health aggression, and many other more things like that, where they found out children or the youth who are more exposed to political violence have higher levels of mental health systems such as PTSD. But how does this affect politically and economically as well? So, in the article called Inequity of Social Satisfaction in Russia During Putin's Regime for Market Transition to the War in Ukraine, the article talks about how the war between Russia and Ukraine affected the economy market directly. This is important to understand how things such as things being shipped from Palestine, like spices, olive oils, and olives, the pricing will be going up. But also in the Palestinian youth. In an article called An Analysis of Impacts of the First Palestinian Uprising on the Israel Economy, they talk about how in the past, in the 1980s, there was also a boycott to Israel products, just like there is today. So, social media and how this affects it. For the Palestinian people, social media has been a tool for helping people outside of the war to understand how they can take a stand to be an activist. In an article called Why do consumers take stands? A review of a customer boycotts in 2023. They talk about the social influences, cultural context, and media framing of boycotts. So, social media has helped uncover untruths told of corporations working for politicians by helping them with money. So, currently, the Palestinian youth are self reporting about how to help, what to boycott, and how are they going on. For instance, an article called Wartime Influencers Palestinian Citizen Journalism on Instagram during the war on Gaza. The article talks about the time of war, how there is influencers who are outspoken during war, and how social media impacts this. For instance, Bisan. Bisan is a 27-year-old Palestinian journalist and activist who uses her power of social media to report the news. So, what is the bigger picture? Um, it brings to like the question, why is erasure of race or ethnicity or a group always repeating in history? So does it have to do with the fear that people have of differences? Does it have to do with the generational cycle of trauma that can't be stopped? Or what can be done about it? We could get more into research about the sociology and psychology behind war, but as well ask the question, why do corporations support like or finance these governments and politicians? So, what are some of the drawbacks of this study? So, the use of unfinished war data. This is an ongoing war, and the data is pretty limited or still being researched. As well, the vulnerable population. We are studying children, and it is still ongoing. But what are the contributions? So at the end of the day, what this population has taught the world of ethnography is that factors such as social media impacts war amongst human beings due to the fact that the truth, this being psychology, sociology of human beings, is unveiling itself through self-press journalism throughout social media. Therefore, it is a global studies and ethnography finding because it talks about factors of human rights, information communication technologies, war and violent conflicts, like for instance, how Campbell will put it, but also peace, or I like to call it harmony. So here are some of my references, and here is a meme that I found really funny. It's me watching everyone because I'm an observer. Of course, it's an APA format, but basically the reason why they found this meme funny because after 1/4 of an ethnography class, it has me thinking I'm really certified, but I know I really am not.